This is Joergen and my name is Herman, and we have chosen to talk about two different ways of erosion that forms our land today. So water and glacial ice affect landforms in many different ways. Rivers run across the land and forms a valley in the shape of a deep V valley, or into smoother but larger U shape as the glacier moves down the mountainside. The ice in a glacier is much more destructive to the land than the running water in rivers. What I'm going to focus on here is U-shaped valleys, and Jørgen will talk about the rivers.
Well, as you can see here, I've drawn a meandering river course, and you can see it by its snake pattern. It goes like it got these bends, and we imagine ourselves that the water flow goes downwards the board. So the key thing about meandering rivers are that they erode and deposit in the bends. They erode on the outer side of the bend, like this, and they deposit on the inner side of the bend. And that's because of the water that flows into the bend. Because the water on the inside has to travel a far less distance, so the flow speed is much slower. So after some time, the bend will become sharper. So that's how sort of a meandering river moves. But as you can see, there's more bends than just this one. So we got these two, and they erode and deposit, just like the big bend. So let's see. They will erode and deposit like this. And as you can see here, they sort of approach each other. So they become closer to each other. And if, for example, a flood, if a flood occurs, the water will probably just break through here and find a shortcut. So then the water will start to flow here or downwards here instead of going through this outer bend. And they will deposit here, and the sort of the remaining of the bend will then become an oxbow lake. Yeah, and this process is called a cutoff. This is a video of how a meandering river can be made. It starts off as a straightforward river, but then the bed-load sediments forces it to make bends and move away from the middle of the river. And that's how the bends are made. You can also see how the bends become sharper. And you see that on the video they sort of made floods, as you can see. So yeah. There are two important processes included in the making of the meandering rivers: abrasion and hydraulic action. Abrasion occurs when water drags with it stone, which rubs or creates friction between the rock and the landscape. Hydraulic action is the process by which the power of the waves loosens the rock and cliff by forcing up cracks. These are both processes that occurs in the bend. They erode the outside of the bends and allow the meander to move. Meandering rivers are often very interesting to watch. Not like sitting next to it and watching it for 10 minutes, but it is interesting to watch it flow over a period of time and see how it moves. We got some examples of rivers like these in Norway, for example Leira in Lillestrøm. Leira got this characteristic bend.
As you can see on this picture, this is what we call a U-shaped valley, a landform shaped by a glacier, also known as a glacial through. These processes forming the landforms started in the Ice Age many years ago, about 2 or 3 million years. As you can see, the U-shaped valley is quite deep and huge and obviously not made by a small river, in contrast to the V-shaped valleys. Some of these fjords in the U-shaped valley are measured down to a depth of as much as 1,308 meters. So these U-shaped valleys are often flat, and the sidewalls tending to be steep and possibly curving inwards at the bottom, with a misfit river in the middle. There are many processes that forms the valleys, and we usually call these glaciation. Glaciation involves the process when the massive body of compressed snow and ice moves. The ice moves by itself, and it's the weight of the glacier that moves down the slope. The heavier, the faster. And when this big glacier or huge glacier starts to move down and hits rocks and stones, the glacier erosion has started. What you can see here is that the U-shaped valley begins as a small V-shaped river valley. When the temperature is low enough, the glacier forms inside the valley because the river turns into ice. Then you can see that the glacier slowly moves downwards and it skirts the valley and shapes the valley as a U, and we get the U-shaped valley. So the demonstration shows that the U-shaped valley is formed by the movement of the glacier, but there are several different processes that affect the erosion. I'm going to talk about freeze-thaw, abrasion, and plucking. This massive glacier has a temperature of about 0 degrees underneath, and at daytime when the sun is shining, the glacier melts a little bit. The water makes the rocks wet and goes down into tiny cracks in the bedrock. At nighttime, when the temperature falls, the water freezes to ice, expands, and causes bigger cracks. When this pressure goes on for a long term, it causes the rock to split and crack into smaller pieces. This is what we call freeze-thaw, and it is one of the most important processes within the erosion. Another kind of erosion is plucking. The glacier is constantly hitting rocks when it moves down the mountain, and often the glacier freezes to the rock. When the glacier freezes to the rock, it will probably literally pluck the stone out of the ground and carry it down with it. So when a big stone has moved to a strange place, plucking has probably occurred, just like people are plucking a potato from the field. Abrasion occurs when the glacier is carrying something that's rubbing the stone against something else. The glacier is not only ice, but also a lot of different materials such as rocks and sand. It's quite easy for us to tell where abrasion has occurred, because you can clearly see scratch marks on the bedrock, which also can help us understand how a glacier moves. And when this glacier comes to its end and melts down, we get what we call a terminal moraine. Typical for terminal moraine is that there is a lot of rocks and stone in this area, because this was the glacier's last stop. What you can see here is a typical Norwegian U-shaped valley. This one is called Erdalen, and you can find it in Stryn in Norway. And this U-shaped valley has steep hills and a flat bottom with a misfit river in the middle.
We hope you've enjoyed our presentation. We can conclude that glaciers and rivers have a large impact on the landforms. Thank you for your attention.